So our guest today is Marko Topchii, a legendary name within the classical guitar community. Marko is one of the most decorated classical guitarists of all time, with over 100 international competition awards, and among them 55 first place prizes, including the GFA, which is perhaps the most prestigious guitar competition in the world at the moment. He has half a dozen CDs recorded, and on top of all of this, Marko leads an unbelievable touring career, which has taken him all over the world as a solo performer and as an orchestral soloist with over 10 different concertos in his repertoire. An all-around amazing virtuoso whose concert you absolutely do not want to miss, so head to vancouverguitar.org to get your tickets before it's sold out, or to get tickets for the live stream of the event, which you can view from anywhere. The concert will be on March 14th at 7 p.m. at the Vancouver Academy of Music. And Marko is also doing a concert tonight in Cleveland. So if you're in the area, go check that out as well. So with that all being said, I'm really excited to present Marko Topchii for our interview today. So thanks for coming on the show, and it's really nice to have you here.
Hi everyone. Hi TJ. When you said the most decorated, I was really hoping that you would say something about the shirt or something like that. I was thinking, okay, does that
That's
I'm
true. You
changing the
also have a
question.
habit of having the shiniest shoes at every competition.
And they're comfortable. Long story short, instead of just telling that to one person at a time, I'll probably tell that to everyone. I just like the shoes. I just liked the shoes one time online. It's Maison Margiela, and I was like, they were overpriced. They were overpriced at the time, and I needed a reason to buy them. And gladly, I didn't buy them on time, so they were then almost immediately sold at a discount. So don't think that I'm bragging about being able to afford really expensive shoes. But basically, I wanted to justify this purchase because they had this black upper part which told that this could be potentially used for a concert, and just this amazing like iridescent kind of like oil splash on the water, kind of like shine to it. And
Mm-hmm.
this shine, actually, it's like really difficult to replicate. I don't think I've found any material that can like look like that, and it's just as wonderful as it's like on camera. It's just as wonderful in person, kind of like that, like.
Mm-hmm.
And they're super comfortable because they have this high platform, and for guitarists to be like sitting in a comfortable position, like my current professor Judika Parwa right now plays actually on both of his feet on a footrest. This is
Wow.
how we're still experimenting,
Mm-hmm.
just to get comfortable. Pianists, for example, they have a huge, many hundred pound instrument in front of them. And actually, a couple of times I've seen even that move when there were some really heavy chords played. But we have our instrument, just like the violinists, like really attached to us, but at the same time, kind of like detached because it keeps slipping away and all that stuff. So having a platform on your shoes for situations with like unreasonably high um, seats or benches, or just unusual benches, it's actually comfortable. So like I have another pair of shoes, spoiler alert, I like to change outfits between parts of the concerts, and this is
Mm-hmm.
going to be with an intermission concert. So please, those who will come, at least expect that there will be some kind of change between parts. I'm spoiling too much. I'm just spoiling too much. Yeah.
Great. Well, we get the behind the scenes of the Marko Topchii outfit. So, could you tell us a little bit about how you started guitar, and what about the instrument has kept you coming back to it day after day for 30 years now?
Well, what kept me together with the instrument is how frustrating it is actually to work on it, and how terrible it is to manage, and how you can kind of like keep on working on it for 20 years plus and still be unable to play it. This is kind of like, this is what I love about the guitar. It's of course irony, but at the same time, this is the reality. Well, basically, I had quite a hard time bringing myself up on the guitar, and I actually tell that story very often because I do a lot of outreach activities during my GFA
Mm-hmm.
tour, and by that I mean I'm performing at schools and at secondary schools and at high schools, and I think it's important to deliver that message that I was actually the worst student in class. There was literally a joke in the class that everyone keeps getting better and better, and marks keep getting worse and worse. And this
Oh.
was like no bullying, no offense type of joke, because my teacher told that to everyone because he could see that I don't like give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
I literally just don't do anything to not fail. And that was a problem. But also, only I now can tell, and my mother could kind of like tell. The reason was that the material was not challenging enough for me, and plus, I don't really like to be very heavily supervised. I like to be guided, and I trust people, but at the same time, I don't like everything done for me. So that kind of like brought a lot of difficulties in my beginning years, I would say. So I was the happiest when I was alone. The happiest when I was alone in terms of just like there was no guidance around me. My parents were kind of like worried about that because they would think that, it's kind of like a kid getting rogue in terms of their development, classical guitar development. They didn't know. I mean, they're not classical guitarists at all, and
Mm-hmm.
probably for the better because, well, I'm fortunate enough to have had reasonable musician parents because having parents as musicians does not always guarantee that you will have like an amazing upbringing. They can be
Mm-hmm.
just as harsh on you, for example, and I acknowledge that. So it's not a recipe for success. But my mom tried to show a lot of understanding like she tried to help me out with like talking to my teacher to give me challenging pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was around 12 or 13, maybe a little bit younger, he gave me a couple of challenging things, which I grew on almost like immediately within the summer. We prepared to a competition and I won the competition. It was a competition for kids playing on various instruments. So this is how I traveled with them later in Hungary to Hungary, and also another trip I've done a year later after winning the older category in that competition to Germany. And that actually skyrocketed my interest in piano because there were so many pianists during that tour. We were around the same age, maybe sometimes some people were a couple of years older. And that actually made me think to switch to piano when I was around 16, because I wasn't really receiving a lot of pleasure from performing on stage as a guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I would have a kind of like an increase in pulse and heart rate when I would think about potentially performing as a pianist on stage. So that was an important factor for me to think about. And I thought about this like, this very kind of like cinematic laying in the bed for half a day, like in almost like a kind of like limbo state,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, trying to compare like the two spheres. One of them was like completely not full, like completely new and like undiscovered, and the other one was semi-discovered, which is me having like certain skills on the guitar. I did not necessarily want to take my skills for granted because it's not you can take them for granted. It's more that they were kind of like half there,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not really bring me too much joy because on stage all that stuff would like work 50-50 sometimes, not exactly 50-50, but that would be like a big struggle to bring out all those ideas. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually I kind of like got more a hold of those things. And I described several important phases, stages in my life. And when I was a teen, definitely technique and physicality interested me the most because that was literally the thing that kept my interest in terms of combinations of fingers that you can use on the fretboard because we'll literally have six different places on the fretboard that can play the same pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that provokes so many variables. It's like it's unlike the piano. On the
Yeah.
piano, I noticed that I can still vary my fingering combinations. There is wiggle room actually. I noticed that it's possible to like come up with unusual fingering choices, but it's more about how you do things.
Mm-hmm.
But on the guitar, it's literally designing pathways, and sometimes my brain actually gets overwhelmed by the alternative pathways that exist in the same timeline. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
in a parallel reality. So it was also a big factor of risk for me, having to relearn things like a couple of weeks before a competition because a new version of a fingering came to my mind, and I cannot play the way it was before just because
Yeah.
I know that the new way will improve everything and
Mm-hmm.
revolutionize my technique. So technique was the thing that actually uh, held me interested. It's still a thing that keeps me very much interested, but I solve those tasks very quickly today, like a month in comparison to a year, or a
Mm-hmm.
day in comparison to a month, or something like that. I
Yeah.
figure out my fingerings pretty quickly, and I can switch them up also very quickly. In Japan, I remember like I found myself making five mistakes in music by Johann Sebastian Bach because some of them were typos and the other ones were just like were sequences of the same typo in other parts of the piece. And I basically fixed four out of five mistakes before half an hour before having to perform that in the first round. And that
Wow.
was, of course, because I understood that I screwed up. But then on the other side, it was like an important moment for me to learn how to
Mm-hmm.
finalize this kind of like quick reaction, I would say. So it is all, I actually keep telling that to the kids as well because they keep asking me very simple but very important questions. So how do my fingers move so fast? how do I learn a piece so fast, etc. And I, as simple as it sounds, it's not just practice, but I definitely tell them that it's kind of like when you study a language or when you learn how to walk, you can barely walk in the beginning, and then you
Hmm.
can actually evolve into a professional runner, but a professional runner probably knows a lot of details that they would never think about before. So I guess that the further you go, the more you can actually be obsessed about certain details that can make
Hmm.
it or break it. Yeah.
Great. So, what would you say some of the most significant turning points were in your musical development? You talked a lot about your path growing up and some things about competitions early on, but any other turning points can you think of?
Yeah, there were important turning points. That time when I was given challenging pieces, a couple of challenging pieces when I was around 11, 12, 13, then my mom suddenly, and my father, I suppose, like they both, I don't really know how it happened. Both of the times I changed class, both in high school and in music school, I didn't exactly understand how my parents decided that it's time to do that because we were planning on staying with the same first teacher for like really a long time because in Ukraine, the situation with teachers was pretty scarce.
Hmm.
So basically, with guitar teacher. So I studied a lot with musicians, not guitarists. And I studied in Kharkiv, Ukraine, with Professor Dutsenko. Received my bachelor's and master's there instead of Kiev because we just have to be very selective with who I study with. My
Hmm.
parents were very concerned about possible negative outcomes from me not choosing the right professor. I don't know. We made the right decision after all, and actually it gave me a lot of freedom because I was still living in Kiev. Well, basically, a lot of turning points happened. I mean, there was a tragic point in my life. When I was 18, my father passed away during the finals of a competition. We were
Oh
going
wow.
to a series of competitions, and I won. I won one in Italy, and this is when he did not feel so well already. And then we went to Germany to a very important competition where I met some important competition winners, including a GFA winner at the competition. I kind of like could not believe my eyes because I just saw him on a video, and
Hmm.
I actually I went on the train station to ask him if he's really who he is, and he said yes. I
Hmm.
was like, nice to meet you. So basically, I was 18, and so then the day of the final round comes. I was at a totally different level. I wouldn't say of confidence, honestly. It was not exactly confidence. It's just a feeling of being kind of like a little bit elated, but from the feeling that you actually are in control of your own actions, destiny, your virtuosity, and
Hmm.
your decision making on stage. It's not just that I somehow boosted my ego or something like that. It really was more about feeling I would say focused, but not anxious and not stressed. So, and that's the morning when my father passed away, and we both with my mom, we were all in the same place in Germany, and we kind of like it was kind of like non-negotiable between us that I have to still keep playing, at the
Hmm.
very least for what he has also contributed to the fact of my like growth within this realm, within this field. So basically, I won that competition by a very, very popular vote. I did not go to the third competition, obviously. And this is when things started changing really seriously because I got a guitar as a prize. And this is when I started traveling with my mom for a year. And we stopped traveling together just because there was not that much for her to do. And also because it was kind of like twice as expensive. So I started traveling
Hmm.
alone. There were important changing points in my life, such as actually so many changing points. Me having different guitars, me winning a new guitar by Jim Redgate in Australia, but also when I was 19, I got a guitar as a gift from a guitar maker in Germany called Heinz Römisch. After a year of playing the guitar by a Japanese guitar maker Yuichi Mai, whose guitar I won at the German competition. So maybe if I want to like talk about this just briefly, I probably will just describe lines of timelines. I would say
Hmm.
certain kind of like lines of important events that took part in my life, because categorize them, I would say, because instruments took a very big part in my development. We were struggling with finding a good instrument for me since I was like a kid. So basically, when I was a teen, at the age of 15, 16, I got a guitar, and it was like semi decent. It was okay. And it costed some money, something like $1,300, and was a decent guitar. And then
Hmm.
eventually, you grow up and things are starting to be like, it starts being more and more crucial that your guitar is not enough for you, especially when your parents are trying to kind of like stimulate you into competing with adults when you're 16, because we went
Hmm.
to non-age limit competitions to Europe. My parents thought that I should compete with the most developed ones without a compromise, without an excuse for age. And I supported that. I had nothing to say against that. So basically, me and my struggle with finding an instrument. Today, I play a Julian Daman guitar, a guitar of a son of a guitar maker who got so famous uh, for his craft of making guitars, and important people, very important people in the guitar world, like David Russell, Manuel Barueco, and many others, have and are playing his guitars, the guitars of Matthias Daman, and I'm playing right now the guitar of Julian Daman.
Hmm.
And for a while, since 10 years ago, like I heard about the waiting line for those guitars, and it was like 10 years or so. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm never gonna get a guitar like that because I don't even know what will happen in 10 years. So it never even occurred to me that I have to step into a waiting line, not even to mention that like at the age of 18, you're thinking that, well, I mean, I believed in my abilities and my talent, but at the same time, I would not think that I would not think that I'm as important, that I'm so important that that I even will be just like considered. And it's
Hmm.
not like you feel that you're too small or something. I just didn't think about it, basically. I just didn't think, I thought it is like belongs to another world. So basically, guitars took a big role in my development. And in fact, um, I've overheard a lot of conversations from people trying to search for a perfect instrument, and I always like brushed that off because I thought that it was a little bit naive to think that a guitar will solve your problems, your questions. I always told myself that I have to just like learn how to play the guitar first, and then I will get a guitar that will serve my purpose. But at the same time, I had a lot of criticism from people telling me that I should not be playing the guitar like I play the piano. And I have a lot of pianistic thinking, which I don't even think about anymore because I don't even think that it's pianistic. Honestly, I forgot about this trait. I forgot about this feature since a long time ago. Um, I used to be obsessed about piano. I used to be very much of a fan of piano, but today I think, and actually, I think more guitaristically today, but a lot of choices that I make are rather detached from the norm, rather detached from the traditional like approach. But that traditional approach, like, is a 20th century approach, I would say.
Hmm.
The world's changing today, and nothing to say about bad about the previous types of approaches, but I just see what I see in this course and I try to make it work the way I see it or hear it. And I think that a lot of people are doing very similar things today, but at the same time, I'm kind of like very specific about the things that I want. So instruments suddenly enabled me to just work more because they were inspiring to listen to while I played. While at the same time, these new constructions of the guitars that are called double tops, that are like lattice brace guitars, all these ultra thin layered tops on the guitars that people have no clue about unless they're professionals. These super thin tops are supposed to be so thin that they're like a membrane of a drum that is supposed to create such a big sound. And at the same time, the funny thing about that is that you're not going to exactly hear what the audience is going to hear. It's going to be a little bit different from
Hmm.
what you hear. And actually, I remember having had this problem since I was a teen. I never really understood the way I sounded to myself, but now it's very synchronized. I actually play in earplugs today, and I hear much better how I come off as. So it's not a surprise to me to hear a live stream. It's not a surprise to me for me to hear my own sound. Not anymore. I synchronize with it very well, regardless of how good or bad it was, like mistakes and stuff like that. So basically, it is a process. I would say it's a process. So I think everything is super important because you said that there was a big roster of competitions, and at least 10 or 15 of them are very old competitions that are just as old as the GFA. GFA
Hmm.
belongs to one of the oldest competitions, and probably the oldest one would be Tokyo, which is like
Yeah.
60 plus years old. And there are many other competitions like in Italy, Pitaluga, or in Spain, the Targa competition, including the GFA, and some others that are like 50 years old, 50 plus years old. So I won the anniversary 50th edition. And all these things, believe it like or not, they were kind of like they were important parts in me moving forward. It's not like I wouldn't have done that without them. I would have made other steps, and I
Hmm.
am always looking for important steps that I can take in development. It's not like I'm very obsessed about taking the right steps, but I think I am very like development oriented because it's exciting. I remember writing myself notes when I was in Germany at a competition, writing myself literal, very primitive notes about the aspects of my performance, of my desired performance. And that was at the time when I don't think I had a phone that was good enough for me to write like full blown notes. But today I write tons of notes, and they're not only about performance, they're actually observational about everything but performance notes. But sometimes they are about performance, and all these things kind of like they are really a lot about future plans, development, observations, and everything. So one of the very important also parts in my decision in my development were the educations that I've taken. So I went to San Francisco when I was 26 or 27,
Hmm.
or maybe 26 class 27, and I studied with Professor Jidikel Parois from France. He got a teaching position there. I think he taught for something like 3 years, and then he uh, took another teaching position in Geneva, Switzerland. And actually, by coincidence, like I did not really plan to do this, but then he signed me up for an exam there, and I passed the exam. And I thought that it would be just like weird for me to, after having passed an important exam where they choose not from guitarists, but actually from all the musicians, they just chose, I think, 4 people for that year. And like it would be weird. It would have been weird for me just like to say, well, actually, you know what? I don't think I will do this. I was just like living in a different place. So
Hmm.
basically I decided to do this, and it's a struggle because well, you're adult enough to actually have concert engagements and all these competition preparations. You kind of like are trying to not screw your professor over by, you know, not being a good student. So
Hmm.
basically that was not easy, and I'm actually still on sabbatical. I'm going to resume my studies after the tour and try to graduate, try not to get kicked out of the conservatory. But those steps are very important because they are very territorial. They mean that you're discovering a new territory, a new place, and you are getting used to the local environment. So me going to San Francisco, I actually told myself that I'm kind of like moving because although I returned from San Francisco home, I still treated it as a full-blown move because I didn't want to be just a tourist there. I actually wanted to see how much I could work, and I went there to work. So I was practicing there at the emergency stairwell at the dorms from like 10 p.m. to 6 in the morning, or from
Hmm.
like midnight till 8 in the morning. I would be meeting sunsets on the rooftop when it was open, or I would be jump skipping on the roof of the building, just like to make to make that huge payment for the dorms worth it at least.
Right.
And I was able to like utilize that space because I don't think I ever found anything better than the emergency stairwell in the dorms for practicing. Nobody really cared that I was there. I'd never bothered anyone either. And I had wonderful acoustics, and nighttime is my time. So
Hmm.
basically, this was a very important part in my development as well, but it was only one of the many parts. And now the tour itself is a very, very important stage because I'm actually learning a lot of things. I'm learning how to communicate with people, and not that I didn't know that before, but after while playing so many concerts, you realize that it's all very intuitive. You realize that some things, it's not like even some things work, but some things don't. You actually don't even have to think about it. You actually have to kind of like be able to feel the room and feel who you're talking to. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's like a different day, and you also feel differently, and you generate different thoughts. And communication is such a key. And I've learned, I would say it's really difficult for me to dissect exactly the things that I'm learning during the tour, except for I think it's an important simulation of a real concert artist because I am used to treating, well, I basically progressed from a person that took competitions more seriously than the concerts because because of the concerts from competitions being quite severely underpaid very often in Europe at least, but I think it's everywhere like that. I've known some things even in the piano competition world that these concerts are almost like demo versions of real concerts that actually high profile performers pay. And this should not be a secret. I'm not disclosing some kind of like NDA type of stuff. I'm actually like talking about reality of a
Hmm.
performer. So basically, I was kind of like disenchanted with the reality of concerts, but at the same time, I used competitions to gain shape that was would provide me enough abilities to perform these concerts at a decent level. But then something changed in me, and it could have been also during COVID. I forgot also to list COVID as an important part, I think, in my kind of like in everyone's, I guess, life processes, being a development or deconstruction, because I didn't even plan on taking online competitions seriously, for example, that time. But then I hopped randomly in one last train of a competition, and I realized that I can actually utilize this because they give you time to record. You have to record, you have to send your recording to a tour, to a
Hmm.
round. There's 3 rounds, and actually it taught me a lot about work ethics. I would say that kind of work ethics, like self-work ethics, when you actually approach your process of preparation responsibly, because I would start a couple of days or 3 days before around a deadline for submitting a next video for a round. And that usually was kind of like enough or almost enough, like barely enough. I never lost a deadline, but it was always a struggle. But it taught me how to like practice and how to know how it's going to sound at the recording, as opposed to me coming to competitions and face checking the situation. I
Mm-hmm.
very often came to a competition realizing that I have severely underpracticed and started like rushing in my preparations
Mm-hmm.
with a mantra that everything that I do from now matters. Like everything, I'm going to try to fix everything from now on without thinking about the past, I would say. But it was still a struggle very often. And I would sit with scores at opening ceremonies of competitions. Um, and I would still keep learning the piece that was that was mandatory for all of us to play. And sometimes it was like those pieces were really difficult. They were contemporary and stuff like that. So basically, at the end of that COVID year, after all these online competitions, I played my first live concert in Kiev, Ukraine. And it was a concert where I didn't even feel a difference. I actually felt so much in shape, and I didn't feel like I even missed the stage, and it didn't give me any stage fright or anxiety. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to, but it's at the same time in Ukraine, I don't remember having given that many successful recitals because I always overloaded my program. It was a
Mm-hmm.
place where we always kind of like hired a filming crew. That's one big stress factor, and the other big stress factor is always something extreme, something super difficult, like 12 etudes by Villa-Lobos in the first part, and then 5 cycles of variations in the second part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those are super important phases of my development. COVID, even like post-COVID, is such an important process because I realized how valuable those opportunities of socializing with our society is. And even my last competitions that I have been doing, even after the GFA, actually, because after the GFA, I won two other competitions. And it's just my big interest to actually study how we work, because as a 34-year-old person, which I was like, I guess 33 that year when I sort of won my last competition in Norway, it was a very important competition, especially for my integration with the Swiss, because I'm in Switzerland and I'm resident there, and I needed to sort of like prove that I'm financially kind of like capable and
Mm-hmm.
I'm financially self-sustainable. So that was an important prize to have won, to actually show some kind of like ability to be a musician that does not require social support and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
basically, all those things are super important to me. And at the same time, I'm also studying how our bodies and brains function when we're sort of older, because I noticed that a lot of my colleagues, when they were like around 27, 28, they wrapped it up and they decided to not compete anymore. And in some cases, I even saw it was because some things didn't work right anymore, like performance wise. It's because people,
Mm-hmm.
when they're getting more adult, they are naturally not very susceptible to being judged. They don't feel comfortable about that. And this is when we are finalizing our processes of developing our own kind of like psyches, I would say. So, me having to deal with my kind of like expectations versus reality, the definite savior factor over there was me constantly trying to push for quality and constantly trying to study the way memory works. I designed so many different practicing methods for myself to reinforce my memory, because I'm kind of like ADHD. So whenever I'm on stage, lots of different signals just like they shatter my memory.
Mm-hmm.
Memory is the first thing that usually gets a hit, but at the same time, exactly because of that, I learned how to reinforce it, and I learned how to systemize it in a way that I should know what I'm doing. Even actually, what I learned also during the concert tour is that all those little things shouldn't even matter for a bigger picture, because ideally you would be performing them well enough, but if something does not go right, that shouldn't be a distracting factor. And I knew about it all the time, I knew about it always, but at the same time, actually focusing on the bigger picture, which is you giving a show, is the most important thing that I'm learning right now. And I'm actually learning how to, like, I would say gently, but squeeze the opportunities that I'm given. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like knowing where you are and knowing that this will likely not happen within the next couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all naturally busy, and sometimes, and also there's a rotational principle of festivals. And I live in Europe right now, so basically it's not like I am in the nearby, it's not like I'm an adjacent artist that gets to come more often. So it's very unique, special, and I'm trying to kind of like make it not just some kind of like statistical concept. I mean, nobody really wants to do that, of course, but I think that sometimes I am even telling myself to not overinvest. At the same time, I do exactly the opposite. I kind of like use my psychic energy to make my point come across, to kind of like justify the fact that I'm here
Mm-hmm.
and people are here. that someone decided to take their time to come to the concert and get something out of it.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
you touched on so many things, and I want to get a little bit deeper into a little bit of the things that you kind of brushed up on. I'm really curious, what is about competitions that appeals to you so much? You mentioned that you really liked the development aspect of
Yeah.
yourself. Is that something that you see competitions really being a crucial factor in?
Yeah, they are because in a situation when you're being judged and you have to perform deliberately, not like in a room when you think that you're playing well because you are just relaxed and nobody demands anything from you, including yourself. A competition is a place where I actually had a lot of like life and death experiences, I would say, or something like that. I had a lot of experiences of survival on stage for half an hour when I know that suddenly my I'm getting this kind of anxiety that winds itself out up, and I'm playing with an orchestra, and I literally tell myself to not give up while I play for like half an hour, sometimes less. It's not like a half an hour straight trying to give myself a constant mantra, but at the same time, very often it has been something like that. I've been, while performing, I've been actually reinforcing myself with these affirmations, and it's not like they really work. It's more like they actually do, but it's not a solution for everything. It's more
Mm-hmm.
like I had to do this to myself because I had a high chance of giving up. I had a high chance of just like losing focus, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where those are the extremes where it brought me. I certainly don't do this at my concerts these days, although a piece by Bach, a keyboard piece by Bach that I decided I'll be playing during the tour, a big partita that middle four middle movements of which I learned just like a month before the tour. The first times when I was playing, not even the first, a lot of times this has been a struggle, and it's still ups and downs because there are some concerts when I'm literally dying, and there are some concerts when I actually don't feel tired while playing this piece, which is
Mm-hmm.
surprising. So basically, I think that all that experience was so detrimental to me just testing all of this under very severe circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
especially considering that there were always different people in competitions, and some of them although played fair in terms of playing the guitar, they didn't always play fair according to my kind of like understanding of how things are done. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
I never really imposed this, but there are some pieces that are just like they are effective in their hands. So everyone was kind of like playing by their cards in a way. And there are a lot of people with a lot of different strengths. So I know I had strengths and I know I have strengths, and people recognize me for certain strengths, but at the same time, I didn't always play the same cards. And I also didn't always kind of like have I didn't always have an advantage over someone with just as strong of a presence. So basically, me having to figure out a lot of things was an important process of me like understanding the reality at all, because otherwise you just start thinking that someone has a disadvantage, so that you're having a disadvantage, or someone has
Mm-hmm.
an advantage over you for no reason at all. It's not fair because they're physically more just like gifted or something like that. So in order to avoid something like that, I actually had to analyze the schematics. I actually had to analyze, well, that person's playing that etude in a certain way that probably nobody else in this competition, or like even in half of the world, probably is able to play. And we're dealing with that person right now. But we have this and this and this strength. And it's not exactly how I did. It's not like I sat at the table and started drawing schematics, but at the same time, I realized that there's some people with like crazy strengths. And it's in the real world, with when people are getting concerts where people are working to their strengths and they are kind of like creating content, it also is very valid. So basically it is kind of like a simulation and introduction to the real world. At the same time, it's kind of like an artificial environment as well, because in the real world it's not really about competing or winning. It's more about actually making your point come across. But at the same time, isn't evolution competition? Isn't like everything else, like, I don't know, social hierarchy is also competition. So in a way, I just don't want to make it sound like I fully support competitions as the only indicators of possible success, because I'm actually talking to people about them not necessarily having to take the same steps. Because from one side, it's flattering and it's nice to know that people know that your contribution to the guitar world has happened through competitions. But at the same time, whenever I hear that someone wants to do exactly play the same or like be like me or something like that, I cringe a little bit just because I know that this is not the truth. I just know
Mhm.
that, well, first of all, you're not going to be able to do exactly that, and you're going to be misleading yourself for a long time. And second of all, well, if I could give people the exact amount of hardships that I'm going through physically when I perform, maybe they would change their minds also, because I go for and I go through a lot of extreme things that I don't even know if I just have a high pain tolerance, or maybe I'm just not exactly designed for tolerating any kind of like discomfort like that, but I'm still doing that. Or maybe it is just normal and everyone suffers. I don't know, because like, there's no way to actually check the amount of, except for, I don't know, bring 100 guitarists in the room and try to check them on a certain scale, how much they can
Mhm.
press with their fingers, etc. But I'm applying so much pressure with my hands that sometimes I'm playing on the edge of my capabilities. And I carry a suitcase that is 50 pounds, and I also carry a hiking backpack that is 50 pounds, and I carry a
Wow.
couple of other home luggages that are kind of like, I don't carry them all at the same time and like whatever. But I mean, I carry one on another, and it's not like I can lift one thing with my finger, but at the same time, I do carry weights in a way. So basically, it's not like I am like keeping myself in a chamber that is deprived of any kind of physical activity. So
Mhm.
at the same time, competitions bring a lot of disadvantages in terms of like they constantly attack your thinking. You're thinking about yourself, and it's almost like, I don't know, a world of models where they think that they're constantly out of shape, or maybe they need to be on a diet all the time. It's
Mhm.
it's a professional world, and a world of athletes and sports people also is considered to be not that very healthy. So we have to be very mindful about how we live, what we consume, how we practice, well, like for example, today during the tour, these days during the tour, and actually during the whole tour, I've been protecting myself from overwork by actually almost not practicing between concerts, except for some exceptional situations when I felt that I need to restore some things.
Mhm.
So I have not been obsessively practicing just like someone would assume I'm doing. So whenever someone asks me a question how much I practice, one of my favorite answers from one of my colleagues was from half an hour to 12 hours. That's my favorite answer.
Right.
Yeah, because people were continuously asking me that question since the beginning of, I don't know, of my travels.
Mhm.
And I understand everyone's curiosity, but I never knew the exact time. And I actually started calculating my clean practice time with a timer. And there were times when I thought I was practicing 6, but I was practicing 4. But then I started experimenting, reached 6, then reached 8, then reached 10 and 12. So it's possible. Things like that are possible. And there were periods of time when I needed that. But it's not exactly what I do today. So basically, you have to protect yourself from like burnout and from over practicing and overplaying as well. So
Mhm.
I've been, yeah, if to say in more simple words, there's one GFA winner that I heard from that he learned during the tour how to not warm up between concerts or before concerts.
That's
Although actually,
amazing.
the time that I have before the concert, like a couple of hours, is exactly the time when I put myself in shape, in order, and just like, get things
Mhm.
sorted out and focus on what I have to do. So it's a very, very interesting explorative process for me. And I like that people very often after concerts would approach me and ask that they would see a certain story being told. They would see that I was thinking about certain specific things. And I always confirm that, because I might not remember what I was thinking about because I'm thinking about everything. I'm thinking
Mhm.
about different scenarios. And I'm also thinking about unrelated things from the gaming world, or from, I don't know, from any kind of like thing that could make me think. And I am using that to convey that in what I'm playing. It's not
Mhm.
like I'm conveying some specific story, especially every single time the same story, just like that. It's not my cup of tea, but I am using my kind of like my thought process to convey a certain story, and I'm almost like surfing the waves of my brain waves, I would say.
Mhm.
I'm surfing my brain waves, yeah, while I
Beautiful.
perform.
Well, there's so many things I want to ask you, but I want to leave the last few minutes to have audience questions. So I'll just
Okay,
ask one more thing from you, and then we'll leave the audience time to put their questions in the chat, and then
sure.
we'll get to what they have. So I just want to do one final question. Uh, what is your process for discovering your own unique voice in a piece? You talked about your expressiveness and your brainwaves kind of guiding the way, but do you have any like general process in the learning stage of your piece to discover your own self to get that expressiveness out onto the stage?
Yeah, the brainwave thing is actually a newer discovery, because before that it used to be distracting until I finally got a hold of that and told myself that it's fine to serve them, and it's fine. It's not fine when it just like throws you away somewhere. And there were a couple of times when I told myself to get myself together because I went a little bit too far. But in general, I'm using this today. But it's not like I've been able to use this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that before, definitely a big part of my, I would say, performance persona were the fingerings that I was talking about. Because if that's a question from a guitarist, that will be probably very useful. I used to be very creative with fingerings, and I'm still semi-creative with fingerings. I'm using my older, I would say my previous version of myself, which used to overcomplicate things. I don't overcomplicate things today anymore because I don't find it just like reasonable for everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been in many difficult situations, but to me, my musical intention is very intertwined with the physical choices, with the technical choices that I'm making. It's almost like I've had a concept of making a musical intention almost automatically work without, and then the extra intention that you apply by your psyche can lead you in different interpretational choices. So I sort of create a certain basis from which I could always propel myself towards any kind of choice. But at the same time, I actually had a very defined period of time when I wasn't sure. Like, I would hear everyone else or most of the people, and their versions of performances were literally sounding to me like much more finished. And then I had to understand that actually it's just like my approach is kind of like deconstructive in a way. But at the same time, I don't deconstruct to just deconstruct. I actually try to find truth in the scores, and I try to see exactly what is written in the scores. And I'm actually like quite dyslexic at the same time with scores, so I sometimes misread, especially Bach.
Mm-hmm.
Diatonic from chromatic sequences easy. Like Guitar Salon International, there's a video where for the Guitar Salon International where I am playing a wrong note, and go figure find that note. But actually, it's I like the way it sounds, but then I discovered that once again, dyslexia. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I kind of like draw power from this openness towards experimentation in terms of fingerings. And then at the same time, the fingerings were a result of me trying to reach for a certain musical result because I see it in the scores. I see it in the scores, and it may look deconstructive in the process and maybe even in the end result, because sometimes I really want to get into those details that some people are hiding. And I've been working with that a lot just to realize that it's probably just me, because in the beginning stage, I felt like almost like I'm just not doing the last remaining percentage of work that's supposed to finish the piece. So my works, my interpretation choices sounded to me like they were unfinished. And probably they were, actually. It might have been possible that they were just unfinished. But I saw so many performers that had kind of like a certain polish to their performances, regardless
Mm-hmm.
of what was underneath that. Because what was underneath that, I always had questions towards, because I'm kind of like a um, fingering fingering experimentator. I am supposed to question choices, and I'm supposed to see efficient ways of doing things, and I'm not supposed to impose that on people, but at the same time I do that for my own analysis and my own kind of like understanding, not only of my experience but of the experience of others. So I didn't see that was it was always reasonable underneath, but at the same time there was a coating of very kind of like glossy and good polish on top of that. And I didn't see that polish in myself. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I'm exactly working on this today, because actually, eventually, I moved to kind of like self sound engineering. I used to like to work with microphones, and I like to try to look for a sound that would satisfy me. And now, though, I don't really work with microphones because I'm just like lazy. And also, my recording device does not exactly work the way I want it to. But at the same time, when I play, I try to make sure that the frequencies are being separated in a certain way, that they are true to what I want them to be. So I have a
Mm-hmm.
different type of thinking today. And that perhaps can lead you to certain feelings of a finished result. But at the same time, it used to haunt me in a way that I never felt like I'm prepared. So basically, I always kind of like doubted or questioned my originality or my own personality, musical personality. I know that there were a lot of traits and aspects to it. And my mother used to kind of like reinforce, she used to encourage me, telling me that like there's a lot of stuff that nobody actually does like you do, and she would exaggerate that, and it's like a mom's loving heart. But at the same, and she was sort of true, and she is sort of true. But at the same time, I had to doubt everything, and I had to just like debate and and dismiss all of that stuff in order to kind of like keep working. So it's a very difficult process between the yin and yang.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Quick
Interesting.
question. Uh, Someone's asking, where did you get the fox dress, and how can they get one?
Um, which dress?
I'm not sure. They just mentioned the fox dress.
Ah, the fox dress. Okay, it might have been okay, it might have been from that interview. You know, I actually myself don't even remember where that came from because
Okay.
I was at the creator of the documentaries. I was at his house, and that was like that dress that I, if I understand well, because I think it has fox prints on it. I literally saw it and I thought, well, let's wear it. But at the same time, I actually had such a strong feeling that this was exactly the thing that I also possessed. So I don't even know if I brought that
Hmm.
to his house or he had that and I decided to wear it. But I'm pretty sure that if you just Google things, you will
Hmm.
be able to. But I think it's more than just a question. I think it's more of a nod to knowing something about me that is kind of like cryptic and an Easter egg. So I appreciate your good memory, fine memory of the details.
Great. Okay. Another question. How do you feel about the new age limit on the GFA being 35 years old?
You know, I actually don't want to kind of like criticize age limits in a negative or a positive way, but I have, you know, it's kind of like a very questionable thing in terms of like who am I to just like tell someone to do what they want to do. But at the same time, my normal thinking would say that it takes such effort to actually decide that you want to compete past a certain
Hmm.
age that it should not be discouraged, and it's quite a rare phenomenon. So basically, my initial thinking would be this. My initial thinking would be that the older the age, the lower the chance that someone will even want to attend, and
Hmm.
those unique people should be kind of like accepted or maybe just like not discouraged. um, but at the same time, I think I know the situation, probably the reasons why this age limit exists, but I don't
Hmm.
think that an ageist the kind of like approach should be is exactly the solution. I think that it's just a search of an ideal form
Hmm.
of selection. I'm not sure if it's exactly an ideal form of selection, but it's an attempt probably to simplify the process and to make
Yeah.
it just like more palatable for receiving a positive outcome. Maybe they're trying to statistically analyze what was the outcome and what is the average age of a GFA winner. Because to be fair, I probably increased the age limit of an average GFA winner just because I think it's supposed to be around 25 years old or so. At least this
Hmm.
is what I think statistically it was about. So basically, from one side, I think that the GFA, I actually thought it was an amazing trait of the GFA to actually have absolutely no age limit. But at the same time, I heard some interesting remarks from my colleagues about how the GFA should filter the competitors that come to the first round. And, you know,
Hmm.
such an ambiguous question, honestly, because
Yeah.
when I was in New York for the edition I won, there were 65 people. And unfortunately, there was only one day in which those 65 people could fit. So a lot of people were cut. And I don't think that they were very happy about being cut. And they probably, nobody really wants to be cut. So basically, you never know whether that's a good thing or not. And I don't even know
Hmm.
what's the statistics. Did anyone who passed to the semifinal even get caught? Um, so it's so many questions at the same
Yeah.
time. I like asking many questions, but basically it could have been possible. It could have been possible that by kind of like specifying based on a CV, for example, or on a preliminary audition, it would have been
Hmm.
possible to just maybe kind of like boil down to a certain amount of people that will come to the GFA. But at the same time, I very much understand the GFA's intention to kind of like attract as many people as possible, because
Hmm.
the Chopin piano competition had 600 applications, and like then they selected 180. And I don't know, maybe it was a pre-selection based on CVs. Maybe then 180 people will be competing in the preliminaries. I don't remember if preliminaries are the actual physical round or they are when you send CDs. It can be all a speculation, because 600 applications could have been really just like applications based on
Hmm.
CV sorting. So
Yeah.
basically, I think it's a good idea maybe to even like take notice from other events and see how they do it. But at the same time, we don't have that much of an overflow of people to be very dismissive of many age categories. So I think
Hmm.
it's constant. I know how the GFA constantly looks for an ideal form and version. And sometimes I or someone else can even feel a little bit bulldozed by the new innovations in rules making, but so are the rules. So
Hmm.
sometimes it also brings a certain factor of like unpredictability to who's going to be the next winner. So I
Hmm.
don't know exactly what I feel about it, but I know for sure that Probably 35 years old. It's still one of the highest age limits for competitions. And once again, it's kind of like a highly unlikely that someone will be able to attend past that age, but there are some people that do this. So,
Mhm.
humanistically speaking, I would probably not dismiss those people, but I would maybe create a certain preliminary round that would be able
Yeah,
to consider their, yeah.
great. Yeah, just a quick comment coming in. They say that the dress was made for you. It was in your soul.
So the
And
dress, which
yes,
dress?
that's right.
The fox dress?
The fox dress, yeah, they think it was made just for you. And then one last question, maybe. Have you been to Canada before doing this GFA tour that you're currently on?
Um, I've been to Canada to record for Naxos. That's the very easy answer. I've been a year before not a year. I've been like 6 months before the GFA concert and before 9 months before the GFA tour to record with Norbert Kraft. But I was supposed to go to Canada several years ago when I was recording my first Naxos album.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, just like the last year, my flight got canceled and I lost the recording day, so I recorded it with him in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So I had attempts of getting to Canada before that, but I don't think I ever have. So yeah,
Great. Well, we're happy to have you. So
I'm very
once
happy.
again, just to wrap things up, March 14th at 7 p.m. in Vancouver at the Vancouver Academy of Music, you'll be able to see Marko Topchii. You can head to vancouver.org for tickets to the event or to the live stream that can be viewed anywhere. And there are 14 more concerts in the 50 concert GFA tour that Marco is currently on, including one in Cleveland tonight. So if you want to find any more information about the tour, you can go to guitarfoundation.org/page/Topchii to see all the different concert dates and locations. So I highly recommend seeing any concerts that you have a chance to, because Marco's an amazing player and very insightful, as you can hear from the answers today. So thank
Thank you,
you very
TJ,
much.
for the wonderful
Yeah, thanks.
conversation and to everyone for their wonderful questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us on the interview, and have
I'm
a good
very
set of
much
concerts.
looking forward.
Yeah,
Very
see you
much
in
looking
one
forward to
week.
Vancouver. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Bye, TJ.